5 members, 1 airport, thousands of cameras flashing at 4 in the morning. And one question that blew up online within minutes. Where are the other 2? No statement, no explanation posted anywhere official, just 5 very famous, very exhausted-looking guys walking through a terminal while the internet immediately started asking why the group wasn't traveling as 7. That's exactly the kind of gap that gets a story trending before anyone's actually confirmed a single fact about it. And by the time you finish this video, you're going to know more about what actually happened than most of the accounts that already posted about it this morning. If you've been anywhere near social media in the last 24 hours, you already know something happened at Incheon International Airport in South Korea. BTS, RM, Jin, Suga, Jimin, and V walked through that terminal together, cameras trailing them every step of the way, heading straight for the United States. 5 members, not 7. And for a group that built an empire on the number 7, that math doesn't add up unless there's a reason. So stick with me, because by the end of this video you're going to know exactly why this happened, what it actually means, and why this specific trip to America might be one of the most important stretches of BTS's entire comeback era. If you're new to this channel, welcome! Hit that subscribe button now, because we cover BTS faster and more accurately than almost anyone else, and you don't want to miss what's coming next in this story. Let's set the scene first, because context matters here. BTS, Bangtan Sonyeondan, if you want the full name, spent years apart while every member completed South Korea's mandatory military service. That's not optional there. Every able-bodied man serves, global superstar or not. It took until the middle of 2025 for the very last member to be discharged, and when that finally happened, something remarkable occurred. 7 grown men who had each spent nearly 2 years living separate lives, wearing separate uniforms, sleeping in separate barracks, moved back into one house together in Los Angeles. 2 months, 1 roof, writing songs, training, eating meals together like it was 2013 again, except this time they came back as some of the most famous musicians alive. That reunion period is where the album ARIRANG was born, and it's also where the tour we're talking about today started to take shape. The ARIRANG World Tour isn't a small victory lap. This is the biggest live production BTS has ever built. More than 80 shows, more than 30 cities, 5 continents, running from April of this year all the way through March of next year. It kicked off in Goyang, South Korea, moved through a historic first-ever run of shows in Germany and Spain, packed out stadiums in Paris and London, and somewhere in the middle of all that, BTS did something almost nobody saw coming. They performed the halftime show at the FIFA World Cup final in front of one of the largest live audiences in television history. That's the scale we're operating on here. This isn't a group doing a reunion tour for nostalgia. This is arguably the peak of their career, happening in real time right now. So when 5 members show up at an airport heading for America, and 2 are missing ARMY, that's what BTS fans call themselves. In case you're not familiar, ARMY notices immediately. And so does everyone else, because moments like this move fast. Within minutes of RM, Jin, Suga, Jimin, and V walking through Incheon, footage was already circulating everywhere. Jin in his usual effortless, almost accidentally stylish airport fit. Jimin quietly polite with the cameras the way he always is, bowing to photographers even after what's clearly been a brutal, non-stop stretch of touring. Suga keeping his head down, saving his energy. V doing his own thing entirely, because he always does. RM leading the group through security, like the unofficial team captain he's basically become. 5 guys, 1 destination, the United States, for the next chapter of the ARIRANG World Tour. And this kind of moment isn't new for this group. Airports have basically become an extension of a stage for them at this point. Fans and reporters in South Korea have tracked BTS departures for years, partly because the outfits alone are treated like runway drops, and partly because these unscripted, unfiltered minutes walking through a terminal are often the most honest glimpse anyone gets of how the members are actually holding up mid-tour. After a stretch like this, Germany, Spain, France, England, a World Cup final, and now America, almost back-to-back with barely any real rest in between. An airport appearance says a lot. Jimin still stopping to bow to photographers. Jin still cracking jokes with staff. That's not nothing. That's 7 guys choosing to still show up for the people waiting for them, even exhausted, even mid-transit, even at 4 in the morning. Now here's where it gets interesting, and this is the part most channels are going to get wrong or just skip entirely because they didn't actually check. The other two members, Jungkook and J-Hope, were not left behind. They were not skipped. They were not excluded from this trip. They already left a full day earlier. On July 30th, Jungkook and J-Hope were spotted departing from that exact same airport, heading for New York ahead of the rest of the group. Why New York specifically, and why go a day early? Because New York is the next major stop on this tour, with back-to-back shows scheduled for August 1st and August 2nd, and someone needs to be on the ground early to handle everything that comes before showtime: rehearsals, staging checks, sound calibration in a brand new venue, media commitments, the entire machine that has to be running before the other 5 even land. So the missing 2 members' mystery isn't a mystery of exclusion. It's a mystery of logistics. BTS didn't travel as 5+2 by accident or by conflict. They traveled in 2 waves because that's what a production this massive actually requires. Stick around though, because the story of that July 30th departure has its own twist, and it's honestly one of the more entertaining airport moments we've gotten from this group in months. Here's what happened. When Jungkook showed up at Incheon that day, he wasn't traveling light. He had this enormous black bag with him, and I mean enormous, the kind of bag that makes reporters stop mid-sentence and just stare at it. One of them actually asked him directly, "Is that camera equipment?" Because if you know Jungkook, you know he has this whole secondary identity as a filmmaker. He shoots and edits his own short films, moody, cinematic, personal projects that ARMY has nicknamed over the years, and every single time he shows up somewhere with serious camera gear, the fan theories start flying immediately. J-Hope, standing right next to him, clearly could not get over the size of this thing either. He looked at it, looked at the reporters, and basically said, "Out of everything I've ever seen, this might genuinely be a record breaker." Then Jungkook, because he's Jungkook, just opened the bag right there and showed everyone what was inside. Professional filming equipment, real gear, the kind of setup that isn't for casual vlogging, it's for something intentional. Now, nobody has confirmed exactly what that footage is going to become. Nobody official has said, this is a new short film, this is a documentary, this is anything specific. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's confirmed, because it isn't, and if any channel tells you they know for certain what Jungkook is filming, they're guessing just like the rest of us. What we do know is the pattern. Jungkook has done this before. He shows up somewhere with heavy camera gear, and weeks or months later, something drops, behind-the-scenes footage, a personal project, a piece of visual storytelling that gives fans a version of a tour they'd never get from official cameras. So take it as what it is, a strong, well-earned piece of speculation, not a confirmed fact. But if you're the kind of viewer who likes connecting dots before the picture is finished, this is exactly the kind of dot worth watching. And this isn't the first time a moment like this has sparked this exact reaction from fans. Jungkook has built up a genuine reputation over years now as the one member of this group who treats a camera as seriously as he treats a microphone. He's the one who disappears into editing software for hours after a show most people would just want to collapse from exhaustion after. He's the one who's turned ordinary travel days into short films that feel more like art house cinema than tour vlogs. So when ARMY sees him walking through an airport with a bag that big, this isn't fans overreacting to nothing. It's fans recognizing a pattern they've seen pay off before. Nobody's claiming to know exactly what's inside that footage, or where it ends up. But if history with this specific member tells you anything, it's that when Jungkook shows up somewhere loaded down with gear like that, it's usually worth paying attention to what comes out months later. Okay, quick pause here. If this kind of behind-the-scenes breakdown is what you come to this channel for, do me a favor and hit that like button right now. It genuinely helps this video reach more people who are curious about what's actually happening with BTS, instead of getting fed recycled clips with no context. And drop a comment telling me what you think that camera bag is actually for. I read every single one, and I want to know your theory before we get any further into the story. To really understand why this specific trip matters, you kind of have to see the whole map first. This tour didn't start in America, and it definitely didn't start easy. It opened back in April in Goyang, South Korea, the first time all 7 members stood on a stage together in front of a paying crowd since before any of them left for military service. From there it went to Busan, the city where BTS actually got its start, for a hometown run that drew well over 100,000 fans across 2 nights, complete with a massive drone show lighting up the sky above the beach. Then came a string of firsts. The group's first ever concerts in Spain, their first ever concerts in Germany, stadiums in cities that had never hosted a K-pop act at the scale before, let alone one filling every seat before tickets, even went on public sale in some markets. By the time they reached London and Paris in July, this wasn't a tour building momentum anymore. It was a tour that had already become one of the biggest global music stories of the year, city after city, record after record, with almost no time built in between stops to actually rest. So let's zoom out for a second, because the real story here isn't just an airport photo op. It's what this trip represents for the tour as a whole. This North American run isn't a short pit stop. It's a full-blown, 30-plus show marathon stretching from late April all the way through early September, and it's already being described by people inside the industry as the most ambitious production BTS has ever attempted. We're talking about custom-built stages, some of the most advanced LED technology currently used in live touring, elements pulled directly from traditional Korean culture woven into a stadium show built for a global audience, and reportedly more than $500 million generated across ticket sales, merchandise, and the surrounding economic activity in every city they touch. This tour opened in Tampa back in April, and by every account, that opening night set the tone for everything that's followed. Reviewers praised how the show balances massive, all 7 members group numbers with quieter, more personal solo moments that remind you these are 7 individual artists, not just one unit performing in sync. And that balance matters, because it's exactly what's made this era different from anything BTS has done before. Go back and look at what's happened just in the last few months. In London, ahead of the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium shows, Jimin did an interview where he predicted, on record, before a single note was played, that London would end up being the most memorable stop of the entire tour. Bold thing to say out loud. And then the shows happened. Roughly 130,000 people across 2 nights, some of the strongest reviews of the entire European leg, and suddenly that prediction didn't look bold anymore. It looked like he genuinely knew something the rest of us didn't. In Paris, 2 nights before that, 92,000 people packed into the Stade de France, and Jimin ran directly into the crowd during the show. No barrier, no hesitation, just straight into a sea of fans, and that moment alone generated more views in 24 hours than most artists get from an entire music video release. Even the French president showed up to that one, sitting in the stands holding a fan light like everybody else in the building. But if you want the single biggest flex of this entire era, it happened barely 48 hours after that Paris show, when the group landed in New Jersey and walked out onto the field at MetLife Stadium to perform during the halftime show of the FIFA World Cup final, the very first halftime show in the tournament's 96-year history. Think about who else was on that lineup. Madonna opened it, Justin Bieber was on it, Shakira was on it, and BTS stood right there in the middle of all of it, dressed in football-inspired outfits designed specifically for the occasion, Suga in a jersey honoring South Korea's own national supporters group, and both Jimin and J-Hope wearing the number 7, a direct nod to national team captain Son Heung-min and at the same time, to the 7 members of BTS itself. Backstage, in one of the hallways of that stadium, they ran into YouTuber IShowSpeed, who has close to 60 million subscribers, and the footage of that meeting, pure excitement, disbelief, a spontaneous backflip thrown in for good measure, spread across the internet almost as fast as the halftime performance itself. That's the stage BTS was standing on less than 2 weeks before this trip to America. That's not a comeback tour anymore. That's a group operating at a completely different level than they were even 2 years ago. So when you put July 30th and 31st into that context, the 2-wave departure stops looking like some kind of drama and starts looking like exactly what it is. Careful, deliberate planning behind one of the biggest live music operations happening anywhere in the world right now. Jungkook and J-Hope go first to get New York ready. RM, Jin, Suga, Jimin, and B follow a day later once the groundwork is set. 7 people, 1 machine, moving with a level of coordination most productions twice their size can't manage. Now let's talk about what's actually waiting for them once everyone lands. August 1st and 2nd in New York are shaping up to be 2 of the most anticipated dates on the entire American leg, and there's a reason for that beyond just the city itself. New York has always had a specific relationship with this group. It's where some of their earliest American television performances happened. It's a city packed with a fan base that's been loyal since long before stadium tours were even a possibility, and it's a market where the pressure to deliver is genuinely higher than almost anywhere else on the schedule. Add in the momentum from the World Cup halftime performance, the record-setting numbers out of London, the viral Paris moment, and you've got a set of shows walking into New York with more built-up anticipation than almost any other stop on this entire tour. And if you're wondering whether this trip is a one-off or part of something bigger, it isn't a one-off at all. This North American leg keeps running through the first part of September, with more cities still to come after New York wraps up. So realistically, this two-wave airport departure we just broke down is probably not going to be the last one either. Expect the same pattern again as the tour keeps moving. An early team going ahead to set the stage, and the rest of the group following once everything is ready for them to walk straight into. If you understand that pattern now, you're going to be ahead of basically every other channel covering this tour for the rest of the year. Quick reminder before we keep going, if you want to actually keep up with this tour city by city instead of finding out 3 days late from a random clip with no explanation, subscribing is genuinely the easiest way to do that. This channel exists specifically to cut through the noise on this stuff, verify what's real before it gets posted, and skip what's just speculation dressed up as news. That's the whole point of what we're doing here. There's also something almost poetic about New York specifically being the city that gets this level of preparation. This is the same city where BTS performed at the United Nations years ago, the same city that's hosted some of their biggest American television moments, and now it's the city standing right in the middle of arguably the most stacked 2-week stretch of their entire career. Paris, the World Cup final, and now this. If there was ever a set of shows where you'd want your most detail-obsessed members showing up a day early with a camera in hand, capturing every version of the build-up nobody else gets to see, this is probably it. And that's really the bigger point I want you to walk away with from this video. This isn't just 7 guys getting on planes. Every single one of these airport appearances, every staggered departure, every camera bag, every prediction Jimin makes in an interview months before it happens, it's all part of a much bigger, much more calculated machine than most people give credit for. BTS in 2026 isn't operating like a group trying to prove they're still relevant after years apart. They're operating like a group that already knows exactly how big this moment is, and they're building every single detail around making sure it lands. So here's what I want from you before you go. If this breakdown actually helped you understand what's happening instead of just showing you a clip with zero context, subscribe to this channel right now, because we're going to be covering every single stop of this American leg in exactly this kind of depth. Accurate, fast, no filler, no guessing dressed up as fact. Turn on notifications too, because New York is happening in the next 48 hours, and you do not want to miss what comes out of those 2 nights. Drop a comment, and tell me which city on this tour you think is going to top London. I've got a few guesses of my own, and I want to see if we agree. And if you know someone who's been sleeping on this tour, someone who still thinks BTS is on hiatus, or not really back yet, send them this video, because clearly they have no idea what's actually happening right now. Thanks for watching all the way through. That actually means a lot, because it tells this platform that this content is worth showing to more people, and it's genuinely the reason channels like this one are able to keep covering stories like this in full, accurate detail instead of chasing whatever gets the fastest clicks. Make sure that subscription is locked in, make sure notifications are on, and I'll see you back here the second there's real footage and real news coming out of those 2 New York shows. Something tells me we're not going to be waiting long. After everything this group has pulled off in the last 2 weeks alone, it would honestly be more surprising if New York didn't give us something worth talking about. We'll see you in the next one.